365. The number 2 internet radio program according to TalkStreamLive.com. This is the Jiggy Jaguar Radio Show.
Wow, oh wow, are we behind? It is the world-famous Jiggy Jaguar Radio broadcast. We are going to go live to our next guest. She is going to join us on the old Skype, the old Skype-a-rooney, yes indeed. And it strikes back. It's like Empire Strikes Back or something. I don't know. But, okay, well, we'll do this. She will give us a holla, holla, holla here in just a few moments. And, last seen 6 minutes ago. We'll see if she calls us back. If she doesn't, then we will go to Pam Oakes. So, get a hold of us online, JiggyJaguar.com, JiggyJaguar.com. And I've moved some things around on my screens, and I think it's going to be much better for me. Hopefully. Much, much, much better. Let's try this again. She's back online on the old Skype, so we'll see if she's there. And we'll get our guest in here. Get a hold of us online at JiggyJaguar.com for more information, iHeartRadio, and everything else. And we have got a great guest joining us today here on the old Skype. And for that, we are going to have her do her own introduction here, just in case I miss anything. Go ahead, my friend, jump in there and give me a brief introduction on yourself.
I'd like to hear you try to pronounce my name personally.
Oh, well, I was going to, but what we usually do here is I have the guests do their own introduction, because there's a lot of times I'll bring you on and I'll mention your book,
right,
or I'll mention your website, or I'll mention a movie or whatever, and then they jump down my throat and they go, well, you didn't mention my Pinterest account. So I just kind of have decided, well, we'll just let you do your own thing. But let's take a shot at this. The last name is Yazdanyar?
That's very close. Yazdanyar.
Yazdanyar.
It looks a lot scarier than it is. It's actually Yazdanyar. Now, the first name is totally out there and crazy. So imagine growing up with that name here. I always knew that I was going to get called when the substitute teacher took this deep breath and just looked at my name and was like, Okay, now what do I say?
Well, you know what is funny about that whole thing is I had a math teacher in 6th grade when I started using my middle name, which is Rogene. Well, she referred to me as Rogaine.
So, oh well, hopefully in 6th grade, no one really knew what that is yet.
Well, that too.
So yeah, my first name is Mehrnoush. My last name is Yazdanyar, and I am an Iranian-American. I was born in Iran. I moved to the United States when I was 3, and I lived here. I mean, if I tell you how long, then you're going to know how old I am. For the past 37 years, and I have the great pleasure of being an attorney that's actually happy, that loves what she does, and
that's
I
awesome.
specialize in sanctions law, which is a unique area of law. Growing up, I always felt like there was just such a big misunderstanding between the different cultures, between being Iranian-American from people that weren't familiar with it. As an Iranian-American, I've had the privilege of being able to experience the beauty of both cultures and to see that we share more similarities than differences. And so, it was always a great passion of mine to try to somehow do something in whatever profession I chose that would help bridge that gap. And I ended up going to law school, and the area of law that I specialize in is actually assisting Iranian Americans or anyone who's getting caught between the sanctions and basically between this war that's been going on between the two governments, because a lot of people don't realize that the sanctions that we hear so much about have a direct impact on normal U.S. persons, normal citizens like myself, who have been living here all of our lives, who have really no ties to the government of Iran, but we're first or second generation. So we have family in Iran. We might have assets in Iran. We have inheritances in Iran.
Yep.
And the sanctions, the way they are, it's a comprehensive trade ban. And the common misconception is that there's such a big distinction between commercial and personal activities or non-commercial activities. And that really just isn't the case in practice. So what my firm has done for the past 11 years is really try to bridge that gap, try to foster an understanding of how these sanctions are actually working in a negative way that impacts, and for ourselves, for the U.S. government, because they're basically wasting time trying to implement things against people who have really no ties to Iran. And by not having more direct relationships between the countries, it does leave channels for the bad actors, to engage in bad activities. So that's basically what I've been up to. And we, it's been a wild ride. I've had clients I had to go to prison, defend, and because it was just a misunderstanding in the regulations that caused it there, and really just trying to get the word out. So that's kind of what I've been up to.
Now, talk to us about you mentioned the sanctions there. What are these basically done? Are these done for any real reason, or are they just, hey, let's do them, and people will think we're getting tough on these people?
Well, I mean, that's a great question, and it's so obviously the sanctions have had an impact on the economy of Iran, right? I mean, we're looking at it; it is on the verge of collapse, and but the question I think that I really look at is that because sometimes it's, if we think of it, well, we're just sanctioning the country, and then we pay lip service to the fact that we're not sanctioning the people. We love the people of Iran. We're sanctioning the government. But when you're dealing with a government who has clearly shown that its people's interests are not what's important for them, or it's not their priority, and they clearly don't care. They've mismanaged funds on so many different levels. There's so many, examples of human rights abuses that occur there. It's really, you can't separate the two. You can't expect to say that I'm putting economic pressure on the government of Iran, but it's not going to impact the people. Of course, it's impacting the people. There are people that are starving. We've seen waves of protests. And so it obviously is working, but to what extent? And I think where I have an issue with it is that it's as if, like, we say, well, we're sanctioning a country, but we're not really directly injuring its people, but you are, and you have to own that. So yes, the sanctions can work, but any person who says I support the sanctions has to then own the fact that those sanctions that you're supporting are causing innocent people who have done absolutely nothing wrong by virtue of just being Iranian or living in Iran are suffering because of it. I mean, they just don't even have basic food to eat. What was once whatever item, like eggs, and this is like oil, like eating to cook with, they can't afford it. And I honestly don't know how people are living. And with the and that is not putting pressure on the government. And unless your hope is like, we'll put so much pressure on the people, they're desperate and they get in the streets and they protest, which they have. And then what happens? The government turns around and quells those protests by killing people, imprisoning people, executing people. And that's kind of the whole picture. And that's the ugly picture that people need to accept.
Well, one of the things that I always find just so strange, and this is, on both sides of the political aisle, what is this fascination, besides the fact they have oil, that the government has with this let's go bomb Iran?
Yeah. So it's obviously, there's politically motivated action. I think being against Iran or wanting to go to war against Iran, it's not, and I'm speaking as an American citizen, right? I'm speaking as someone who loves this country, who's been here all my life. In my viewpoint, a war against Iran is against the interest of the United States. We simply are not at a place to do that. And the reasons that people that want to go to war against Iran are using to justify it, it doesn't make sense, because if you're saying that Iran engages in human rights abuse and that's what your problem is, then what about all the other countries that the United States are allied with that engage in those same abuses, right? Or if your position is that, they fund terrorist activities, again, there have been other countries that have fostered terrorists and we don't extend it. So when there is a disconnect between what people are, where they advocate war in one scenario and not in another, then you have to question the beliefs, the agenda, why that person is. It's not a belief system that's the same. So it has to be motivated by an agenda, and I think that's what it has come down to with Iran. And particularly frustrating for me is that in the case with Iran, you have a unique situation where you have about 1 million Iranian-Americans living in the United States. You have Iranians in Iran who don't have this hatred that people may often think that there is for the U.S. And I'm talking about the majority. Obviously, just like in our country, we have all sorts of viewpoints. That's also the same in Iran. But there isn't this general hatred of the United States or hatred of the West. It's actually quite contrary. But when we come down and we advocate war, or when we come down and we advocate harsher sanctions, and you're basically driving these poor people farther and farther into the ground, it's hard for them to not listen to what their government is telling them, which is like, these people want to destroy us, these people want to destroy our country, and that's very problematic for me. And then from a general standpoint, what would it accomplish to go to war with Iran? It just doesn't make sense. And the last thing we need right now is another war draining our resources, is another war, just tearing us further apart as a nation. This is a time for us that we need to really come together and really find that one little thread that still links us together as a country and is holding our democracy together. We need to strengthen that. We don't need to put ourselves in a position that's going to tear that farther apart.
I completely agree with you on that. We have got a tremendous guest with us today. She joins us live here in our broadcast, and I am going to take a stab at this. Mehrnoush Yazdanyar is with us.
That is not so bad at all.
She joins us live here in the broadcast. You can get more information on her website, Yazdanyar.com. That's YAZDANYAR law.com. And she joins us today here on our big program. And you have definitely been a treat, my friend. I have really enjoyed chatting with you, and I definitely want to do this again. And
absolutely.
With what exactly are you? I know that you're going on all these radio programs and all these TV shows and things. What are you trying to get accomplished and get out there for folks?
Mm-hmm. So I guess what it is that I'm tired of all this negative noise that's out there, and it's all about hating one side or the other. And I believe it's truly easier to hate something or someone that you do not understand. And my face, my person, who I am, my community, and where I come from, if you take the chance to get to know me, it will be very hard for you to continue hating Iranians, Iran, the culture, anything at that level. And when I say you, as any person that doesn't know or understand. So the whole point of this is to kind of create a dialogue that says, Iran and what you see in the media and what you hear about it, that's not what Iran is, and that's not who Iran is. Iran is a country with a beautiful history, thousands and thousands of years old, that certainly should not be judged by the government that's ruling it for the last 40 years. There's a lot of Americans who would never want the identity of America to be defined by one particular administration, correct? And so that's where we are. And I just, as someone who's incredibly familiar with both cultures, that's my passion. And so I've always, so I grew up here. I'm a huge football fan. I'm a Denver Broncos fan. I know we're having a tough year. It's really been downhill after our Super Bowl, but I would travel every year, and I'd go to Denver, and I'd go anywhere they were playing. And a lot of times I'd go to places, and I'm from California, but a lot of other states don't have a high populace of Iranian-Americans. So people would just kind of look at me and be like, well, where are you from? Well, you look American. And we'd sit at a bar, we'd have a beer, we'd watch football, and we'd start talking. And it didn't matter if you're a Democrat, it didn't matter if you're a Republican, it didn't matter if you knew who Iran, what Iran. The minute they were like, well, where are you actually from? And I told them, they were just shocked. And then they had all these questions. And it always ended with, even if we didn't agree on the same policy, even if we didn't agree on certain points, even if one person was from one political party and one was another, there was dialogue, there was understanding, and there was respect, because we had common grounds that we could start on. And that's kind of what I hope to achieve, is that, if anyone's listening, it's like, just learn what you're disliking so badly. And I use that same when I come across that same philosophy and mentality when I come across Iranians or any other background, that have very strong viewpoints about another nationality or another country. It's kind of like, okay, well, before you do that, like, what do you know about that culture? Because and the truth is I don't think many governments want us to do that because I guess it's easier. It's easier to follow an agenda of hate if you don't understand what you're hating.
Yes, I completely agree with you on everything there, my friend. We have got a great guest with us today, and she joins us live here in our broadcast. And I appreciate you making time for us today, and I definitely want to have you back. Keep in touch with us, my friend, and have yourself a wonderful day.
Thank you. Same to you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, my friend. There she goes. And Mehrnoush Yazdanyar? I don't know. I am Jiggy Jag, the ugly American. That's pretty much what I can suck, and I can sum up.